Marketer of the Day, episode 529, The IronMan Mindset, Simplified Success Habits and Next Level Thinking, with sales coach Dr. Richard Greene.
Hey everyone, we're so glad that you tuned in to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're chatting with Dr. Richard Greene. You can find out all about him at IronManMind.com. And Richard observed that having talent and skills is not always guaranteed success. And he discovered that the missing ingredient is a mindset that is creative and powerful and unstoppable. So he's going to tell us all about his mindset, about this thing he has called Amplifier, which is a business coaching and a consulting company located in Sacramento, California. Me and Richard has met, I think, twice, just real quick, from local networking events. And Richard works with executives in the U.S. and internationally, and he's also a 5-time Ironman triathlete and marathon swimmer. So, Richard, glad to be talking to you.
Hey, thank you, Robert. Really appreciate that intro. I was listening to that going, who's that guy he's talking about? Almost didn't recognize it, but that was a great intro. I appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah,
and your listeners as well.
Well, cool. Yeah, chatting with everyone. Yeah, I mean, sounds like a pretty cool dude. And I really like this whole idea that you have of your brand of the Iron Man thing. And so if it's okay with you, I'd kind of like to start there and have you maybe tell us about what the heck this Iron Man thing is, because I think that we've all heard about this concept of like a triathlon, but can you tell us like just what is required of this physically? And more importantly, I guess, like, what's the point? Like, why do you do it?
Well, I don't know if I can answer why I do it, but because a lot of people say I'm crazy. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And so I'll start with that. I'll tell you about that, and then I'll also tell you why that's relevant to what I do as a business coach. So for those of your listeners who don't know what an Ironman triathlon is, it's a pretty long race. It's actually a pretty long day. It starts with a 2.4-mile swim. And then after you complete that, you get out of the water and you hop on your bike and you do a 112-mile bike ride. And then when you're done with both of those things, then you run a marathon. So it's a pretty incredibly long day, and sometimes it can be incredibly painful as well. The timeline to complete this is 17 hours. And I'll tell you that I've done 5 of them now in the last 5 years. Soon to be number 6, coming up in September of 2018. And, the first time I did it, the 17-hour time frame, I came in at 16 hours and 47 minutes. So I had 13 minutes to spare. And last year, so I'm improving as I'm going along, I finished in about 13 and a half hours. So I do it because I learned to love the sport. It wasn't something that I was born into. It wasn't something I ever did before. I sort of came upon it as a way to stay in shape, and what evolved out of it was a whole mindset shift, and a new business for me as well, and a new way of helping others achieve unstoppable success in their business lives and in their personal lives because of the things I learned as an Ironman triathlete.
Well, craziness. Well, I mean, I have massive respect for, first of all, anyone who does anything 17 hours, right? I mean, imagine if you had like a button in front of you and someone was like, you have to keep pushing that button for 17 hours, and let alone even doing all that stuff, even if that took you like a couple of days to do. But you're telling me that if you do all those things, the 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, 26.2-mile run, if you do all those things, but it takes you 18 hours, it doesn't count, right?
Well, you're not. You know what? I think it's all how you define it. If you do it in 18 hours, it's a tremendous accomplishment. You're not able to call yourself an Ironman, but it's a tremendous accomplishment. And I know people that have crossed the finish line after the clock stopped and the light shut down. And the most exciting time for me, and I think for many others, because we're all watching at midnight. Wherever you are in the world, it's midnight. And everybody is cheering on those last athletes. The professionals have come in a long time ago, but everybody is cheering on those amateurs. To me, that's the most exciting time, just the last few minutes before everything ends, because you see some amazing things.
Yeah, coming in right under the clock. So I mean, this is just like a crazy thing that you do, crazy in a good way. So how does this connect to what you do as a business coach?
Well, and I think, and thanks for asking that question, because I think it's an important distinction. There's a lot of business coaches out there, and I was coaching for a few years before I rebranded myself as the Ironman business coach, and before I created a whole new way of teaching business owners and business executives about how to be successful in their careers and their businesses. And so one of the things that it started actually with the very first Ironman that I did. And it was a particularly difficult day. Let's just say that that day they had a 50-year high as far as the weather was concerned. It was 108 degrees. It was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I had chosen it because I thought, what a beautiful place, and the weather will be nice. Well, that wasn't the case. Actually, more than 500 people ended up in the hospital. It was pretty serious stuff. Long story short, Robert, I finished the race. The next day, I'm at the airport. We're as Ironman triathletes, we're all marked up, so we can see how old each other are because our ages are marked on our calves. I'm 56 years old now, but at the time I looked at this guy at the airport and I could see he was 25 years younger than me, and I see that he had a wristband on. So I went and introduced myself to him and asked him how the race went. And unfortunately for him, he didn't finish. I finished, he didn't finish, and I said, "Gosh, that's terrible. What happened?" And he proceeded to tell me that he had 6 miles to go and he just got violently ill and he just felt like he couldn't go on. And I asked him one more question. I said, "How much longer did you have to go?" And he looked at me and said, "I had 2 hours left." And I walked away and I thought to myself, okay, this guy just told me, I see he's 25 years younger. He told me, what his speed was. He's a pretty fast runner. He looks stronger. He's been a triathlete for a long time. I'm a brand new triathlete and, an older one too. Why did I finish and he didn't? And I thought more about it because he had strength, he had talent, he had, everything going for him, but he didn't finish. And I realized the one difference was my mindset. And that led me on a whole journey of research and exploration into really understanding this thing that carried Ironman triathletes, men and women, across the finish line. And I have over 100 video interviews today with Ironman triathletes, both amateurs and professionals, and I really investigated what that was. And out of that research, I came up with 10 principles, 10 mindset elements that I found were common across all these athletes. And so I took those 10 elements and I combined them with skills and tactics that I learned and practiced and perfected as a sales professional over 30 years. And I actually have 50 of them. So I have 50 of these key tactics that I use as a salesperson and 10 very powerful mind principles. And I put them together. And that is the formula that I teach people. And you introduced me earlier on and you said that, talent and skill are not enough. Well, that younger guy that didn't make it across the finish line, he had all the talent and all the skill that I didn't have, but he didn't have the mindset. And so that's the story about, how I developed this mindset. And you don't have to be an Ironman triathlete to have the same mindset. You just have to know what the principles are. You have to put them into practice, and then, you have to live them in your business and in your life.
Super cool. So you think and grow rich here, right? You interviewed everyone, you figured out the commonalities, and you found out that just being born with talent or developing skill isn't necessarily enough. And that's both good and bad news, right? Because you might have a skill but then not apply it correctly and squander it. But then the good news to that is if you feel like you're behind everyone else, if you feel like maybe other people have gifts they were born with in one way or another that you don't have, then you can put forward the extra effort and get yourself there. And so you have these 10 mindset elements, these 10 principles. Do you feel like unpacking one or two for us to give us a taste?
Yeah, sure. Why don't I, Robert? Thanks for referring to me as the Napoleon Hill of athletics. But I think I do research. I am very passionate about what I do. I want to make sure that the things that I'm teaching people are based on real life tactics and skills that work. Science. There's a lot of mind. There's a lot of psychology, and there's a lot of science of the mind involved in this. And so, if I've got your permission, Robert, I'll just read what the 10 mind principles are, and I'll pick one and talk about it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So here they are. A IronMan mind, a person who has an IronMan mind is determined. They're helpful. They're optimistic. That's probably not a surprise. They're insightful. They're organized. They're inclusive. They're willing to sacrifice, they're focused, and they have appreciation for what they do. And finally, they've got courage. And so there were many things that came out of all of those interviews and the research, but these were the 10 things that just kept coming up and coming up. And so what I do is, depending upon the situation and the person that I'm dealing with, we'll usually focus on one or two or three of these. I mean, they're all important, but there's usually a few that really are really relevant to the individual that I'm working with in their life and their situation. But the one that I think I find pretty much common across almost everybody, and maybe this will resonate with you, Robert, because I know you're a really very extremely organized in your business, and that's it, organization. Really being organized is a success element, and I'm sure you find that as well.
Yeah, I do. I noticed that if I leave things to chance, then my income goes down and my productivity goes down, my mood goes down. And if I can just do a few things to be organized, like know my goals or know my daily tasks, things like that, then magically, or maybe not so magically, things seem to pick up. But I think that my own problem with being organized is sometimes I struggle to find that sweet spot of, sometimes I say, well, I just want to relax and chill and let things happen, which doesn't work. But then I also don't want to go to the other extreme of kind of planning every little thing out, because then there's no time left to actually implement. So those are sort of my thoughts on myself as far as being organized.
Yeah, I like that. And you actually just came up with one of the reasons why a lot of people fail at planning their day. And that is, they get too regimented. They don't give themselves space to be creative and to actually implement the things that they plan to do. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I think daily planning, and obviously you're a successful person, and I will tell you the thing that I see all successful people do, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in the arts or you're in business or you're in sports. Organization and planning is absolutely key. And the person that plans their day and how that day is going to go is the person that ends up winning. I really believe that. They finish the day, and I believe finishers are winners. So back to that. So I'll just give a little tip here for your listeners, if that's okay, about organization.
Let's do it.
Yeah, one of the things, so back on the thing that you said, which was really important, is getting too regimented. And there's some people that works really well for. I'm one of those individuals that probably plans out their day a little bit more as far as what I'm going to do each hour. But I do give myself space for breaks. I do give myself space to regenerate, let my mind regenerate, or I'll take a walk, or I actually plan that into my calendar. But time management is really a misnomer. You can't manage time, but you can manage the activities that occur within that time. And the people that learn how to do that are the people that are super productive. And so one of the things that I help people employ, I call the law of limitations. We're limited by the amount of time that we have. So most successful people have a really long list of things that they want to do. But if you write all those things down, usually you're never going to accomplish them. And so I'm really big on ordering that list and coming up with the one thing that I will do each day that's going to get me furthest along in that goal that you talked about that you want to have, or or something that's going to be really meaningful. So I always have at least one thing that I must do. Sometimes it's really difficult, but I make that first. And then I have 2 or 3 other things that I want to accomplish. And that's it. It's a very short list. And I've found, and the people that I work with have found, that is the key to staying focused and to being super productive. And you might ask yourself, what happens if I finish that list? Well, that's beautiful, man, because then you just add something else to the list. So that's my little tip for everybody, which is, you're limited by the amount of time. Limit the number of items you put on your list. Make sure you do one thing that's really, really important that'll get you further along in where you want to be in life.
I love it, and I agree completely. And I mean, as you know, it's really easy to kind of get far down a track and to be, in business for a certain number of years or be doing whatever, and then forget about these simple kind of fundamental principles. And you always hear people talk about the Brian Tracy, eat the frog first, stuff like that. But then you don't always hear about people implementing it. But then you do hear about people with their crazy systems or crazy to-do lists. They have 30 things going on. And then I don't know about you, but what I've seen with people who have these crazy to-do lists is they end up just getting overwhelmed. And then they look at, well, I've got 100 things. Let me just get a couple crossed off, and then they'll look at the quickest, least important things to do, and then they feel great because now the to-do list has gone from 100 to 98, and it's yeah, but it was, you updated your Twitter background, you went and you deleted 10 emails out of your email program, so it's you felt a little bit better, but you actually went and sorted from most important to least important and took out the least important. So yeah, I agree completely that it's really easy to think that just having everything super crazy and complicated is better, and it's easy to think that, I'll just squeeze out every last minute of the day, but then it seems like the opposite is true because we get tired, we get distracted, we have to switch between tasks and all that, all these little hidden, costs, all these hidden time costs throughout the day, and so just simplifying it, making it way easier is the way to go, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robert. And sometimes I feel a little guilty when I'm instructing somebody or I'm helping them to become uncluttered in their life, and it just seems so simple and commonsensical. But you're right; people forget about it, and they get caught up in all of this frenetic activity that occurs in our daily lives.
Yeah, I mean, amen to that. So as we're beginning to wind down here, I want to make sure that people have an idea, and they already have a little bit of idea, but what you're like as a business coach. So do you have any interesting stories about some kind of client that you came across and they had some set of problems and you went and kind of turned their lives around? Do you have any interesting stories like that?
Wow. Yeah, I got lots of stories. I mean, as you know, I'm a sales coach. I focus on sales because I'm a 30-year sales professional. So I've got a lot of stories of people that were they were in a slump. And mostly I'm working with people that are established. They're not brand new. They're established. They've had some success in their career, and they want to take it to that next level. Or they're in a slump, and they need to figure out how to get out of that slump. So I got a lot of stories about different issues that people have gone through and how they've been able to increase their sales. And typically, this is just a kind of a rough figure, but typically when I work with somebody, almost immediately we're able to see a sales increase if it's in their business or their personal productivity of 30 to 40%, and that's fine-tuning some things. It could be a lot more than that. But so I've got a lot of examples there. I think probably the one that will be relevant for everybody on this call, because you don't have to be in sales to be able to benefit from this, is the one that we just were talking about, which is planning your day and being as productive as you can. So it doesn't matter what you do in life, and it doesn't matter if you're in childcare and taking care of your family. You still have to be really good at planning things because there's so many activities that go on. I think the thing that I just recently worked with an executive who called me and said, and this guy's been in the business for 25 years. He's at the vice president level and a big company. And I was a little surprised to hear from him. He said, my boss has given me 2 weeks to turn things around or I'm gone. And I was shocked to hear that. When we dug into things, I realized that he was just getting caught up in all of the stuff that goes on your day, the emails that come across, the texts that come across, the phone calls that come across, and he saw all of those things as things that needed to be addressed immediately, because we become a society where people expect you to respond immediately to things. And I had to put him on a little bit of a diet as far as answering these things and turning off the texts and turning off the notifications on your email and really getting down and doing some planning. And in a matter of 2 weeks, because we had that 2-week deadline, things had completely changed in his business life and also in his personal life, just because we did the things that you and I were talking about, Robert, making it very simple, shutting down some of those things, because unless you're a doctor or your job is to be on call, minute by minute, most of the stuff that comes in you don't need to answer. There's not emergencies. The emails that you get, they don't need to be answered immediately. So we just scheduled some of those things out during the day, and life changed dramatically, and he's moving along nicely. And he and I were done in a matter of 30 days. So I think that's probably a good story and a good lesson for everybody, which is stop, take a look at the situation around you, decide what's really important, work on those things, and leave the other things for later on.
Super awesome. And I mean, I can relate to that, especially very recently, like in the last couple of days, because I don't know if you heard the saying, like, everyone needs to meditate, and if you're not busy, you should meditate for half an hour a day. If you are busy, you should meditate for an hour a day. Like, it's counterintuitive. Like, if you're,
right.
if you're always putting out fires, you actually need more of a break. And in my case, these last couple of days, I've just noticed that I was spending a lot of time on my smartphone, and some of it was Facebook, and some of it was reading like a book on Kindle, and some of it was going browsing like message boards on Reddit. And I thought to myself, it feels like if I counted up the number of hours I was spending that day looking at my phone, it seemed like it wasn't very good. And I just thought, okay, just the fact that I'm thinking about it probably means that I need a break. And last night I went and turned my phone off, plugged it in, charged it, went for a walk last night, and I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should just take my phone and like check something real quick, or just take my phone so I would have some music to listen to while I'm on my walk. And I'm like, I'm trying to talk myself into using this again. It's almost like an addiction that's eating up all this time. And then this morning, I woke up and, phone was still off, but still plugged in and sitting there. And I was like, okay, well, I spent the night without my phone. Now maybe I should use it again. And I was like, maybe I'll just spend all of today not on my phone, just because like I've been in not a huge funk, but a little bit of a funk. And then came to the computer even today, and I was like, I didn't check email yesterday. I'm not going to check it today. I'm just going to focus on the things on my calendar, like the interview with you and with some of the things I need to get rocking and rolling in my business, because it's like, what's more important, wasting time on these unnecessary emails versus doing the things that are actually revenue generating. And so, I mean, you're so right in that it's important to just keep things simple for our mental health purposes and keep things organized on the calendar, and to not overdo it, and to realize when we've just let the multitasking, the putting out fires get away from us, and then maybe that's when it's time to dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, I tell you what, I bet you found that was pretty refreshing, after you understood that you didn't need to do all of that instantaneous stuff. We call that, and you often see this in lots of things that we read about multitasking, we call that becoming a digital slave. And there's so many of us that do that.
Yeah, and so many of us that are maybe in denial or can't get past those first couple of hours of the withdrawal until we kind of can see the light again. And then one other thing that you mentioned in there was the sort of like the child care thing of like how, people who are good at like caring for their children are probably more organized. And I read something maybe, I don't know, like a few months ago that was like, people seem to get confused about, they think that easy means simple and that hard means complicated, but it's like they're separate things, right? Something can be easy or hard, and then something can be simple or complicated. And so like the childcare example, that's something where it's simple, but it's hard, right? And so it's like, it doesn't necessarily, like simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. So we might need to make things simple, even though we might be solving a problem in our business that might be easy or hard. So it seems like simple is the way to go, depending, even if we have this difficult thing that we have to be dealing with. So I mean, yeah, lots of stuff for us to sort of chew on here and think about as far as getting that simplicity in our life and getting organized, so that way we can think about the big picture and get to where we need to go. And so yeah, I mean, lots of great lessons here. And so if people are listening here to our conversation today and they're wondering, man, this Dr. Richard guy, he seems really smart. I want to know about his business coaching. I want to know more about this Ironman coaching stuff. Can you drop some links here and tell us where people can and should go after listening to us today?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. So I got two things. I got a link that a website that I'll give you right now. I have, for those that are interested in taking their sales success or if you're a business owner, your revenue success to that next level, I have a 2-day sales training seminar in Sacramento, California on April 25th and 26th. It's going to be an incredible event. I've got some great speakers lined up. And I'm going to be launching my book, The Ironman Sales Success Formula, that same week. People that attend will get a copy of that. You can go to www.optimizeyoursales.com, and you can find out more about that. And for your listeners, Robert, I created a special report, and I put it up on my website. And I think it's very relevant to what we were just talking about. That has to do with multitasking. And just being a top performer. And so it's called The Secret Strategies of Peak Performers. And you can go to amplifyyourresults.com and click on free resources, and you'll see that report there. And again, I put that up especially for your listeners. And I hope you guys all take advantage of it and really create some productivity and some success in your life.
I hope they do too. So amplifyyourresults.com is the place to check out that free report, and then also optimizeyoursales.com. So great stuff. And as we're about to close things out, Dr. Richard, I got to ask, what are you a doctor in?
I have a doctorate in business. My whole career, my whole academic focus has been marketing. And so I've got 3 degrees. I've got an MBA also, but all business-oriented, marketing-oriented. And, it's allowed me to do some really wonderful things. Teach at the university, but also allowed me to do some really wonderful things in the business world.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, very impressive. And thanks for coming by and sharing with us your all your I guess, decades of research, both in your own education and your experience and your Ironmanning and in your interviewing. So really appreciate what you had to share with us today, and I appreciate you. So thanks so much.
Hey, thank you for having me, Robert. Have an incredible day.
Heck yeah, you too. Do you want a podcast like this one? Well, what's been holding you back? What if it was easy and you had someone to help you get it going? Check out doneforyouPodcasting.com, where we'll handle some or all of your podcast setup, production, marketing, and more. See you soon at doneforyouPodcasting.com.